This is a full teardown video on an HP Compaq 8200 Elite Ultra Slim desktop. I always find teardown videos that don't have the kind of stuff that I would want to see with the details I would want to see. So with this one, I am going to start doing teardown videos with the information that I would need were I to be looking on YouTube for a teardown video of the unit. These are a common enough unit, a cheap enough unit, and for what they are, they're probably one of the best bang for the bucks that you're going to get. This has basically, short of a capability for a high-end desktop video card, this has all the capabilities of a standard desktop computer. Has a desktop processor. It does use laptop RAM, but laptop RAM is readily available easily and up to 16 gigs. I don't think you can go higher than that, but it's readily available up to 16 gigs. So it does also use a 2.5 laptop hard drive. But most people that get these and upgrade them are going to put SSDs in them. And even if you're not putting an SSD in it, 2.5-inch drives are now readily available in pretty much the same size that most desktops come in anyway. So it's not prohibitively difficult to find the parts or expensive. You can turn this into a pretty cool little box. So start my teardown here by opening the top panel. Just a disclaimer, this is the first one of these I've actually completely torn apart, but from what I can see, it looks pretty self-explanatory. So first, this is the, let's see if I can pull this up here. How do we do this? So this is the SATA for the small-sized slim optical drive. So we're going to pull that out. Then looks like this mechanism here and this here will allow the drive to slide out. So we pull our optical drive out, set it aside. Then it looks like, let's see here, that, okay, so that mechanism pulls our hard drive. So we set that aside. And it looks like probably gonna have to pull the front off. These are pretty self-explanatory. They literally have, I don't know if you can see it, I think you can in the video, they literally have little forward, the tabs that hold the front panel on have forward arrows on them. So you pull these up, and that takes our front panel off. Since I have it open anyway, I like to do a kind of a quick light dusting on it. It's not filthy, but if you're going to open the thing anyway, there is no good reason not to do a quick light dust off. Same with the front of the unit. So it looks like, in order to get at our CPU, we're going to have to pull this frame. I am going to guess that it is the two visible screws. Let's see if I'm right here. So there is one, I'm still getting used to doing this on the camera. So there is one screw here where my thumb is, and that's probably going to allow this to, looks like it's going to slide back that way. And then there's another screw right where the, right underneath the hard drive, right here, and you're going to have to pull that as well. And let's see here. Did I get it? So we might have maybe one more. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Okay, so it looks like the way that works. So this tab right here comes up. So you pull that up. It does look like it takes a little bit of a full up, and then you firmly pull back on this entire bracket mechanism, and it comes right out. So that's that whole bracket. So underneath here, we have a well, yeah, I think that's a PCIe 1X. So this is, I believe on this model, this is intended for a wireless card. So I would have to do some research and see if this model requires an HP specific wireless card. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I'd say it's about 50-50. I would bet that it probably would take a generic Intel card, but I'd have to actually do it to be certain. So in order to pull the CPU, we've got three of these. Or I'm sorry, 4 of these. Oh, no, it actually might be 3. Let's see here. Oh, no, it's going to be 4. So you're going to also want to pull this. So the fan literally lifts right up. So you can just unplug the fan. It's a little bit snug, but it'll come out. There we go. So there's that. Again, I recommend wiping down each of the parts because since you have it open anyway, there is no good reason not to, even if that's not your purpose for getting at these parts. So, in spite of the odd size and shape, it's still a pretty standard LGA. I will vacuum it again later, but probably put fresh CPU compound on it. And the socket underneath is a completely standard Intel socket. There's nothing special about the socket itself. If you're used to dealing with Intel 775, if you're used to dealing with Intel 1155, 1156, it's the exact same socket. It's just in an unusual designed machine. Okay. So one of the tricks I have found is when you pull these chips out, you always want to blow. You can use a vacuum. Contrary to what people think about static risk, I find as long as the vacuum's far away and you just use the hose, it's fine. But I like to either blow or vacuum and make sure that you don't have a bunch of dried CPU thermal compound just waiting to fall onto that socket, because if it gets on that socket and you don't realize it and then you mush it in, it doesn't always hurt it, but I hate having it like that, so I prefer just to make sure it doesn't get there to begin with. Okay. So this is going to be an ultra affordable i3 when I'm done with it. 3.3 gigahertz i3 2120. You don't need a low wattage chip with the i3 simply because the i3 is an ultra low wattage chip anyway to begin with, so you're fine there. So a unit like this, I always say sometimes you can get away on lower power chips without heatsink compounding them. People tell me, oh no, you can't do that. I don't recommend it, but if you don't have any on hand and you have to get the job done, sometimes you can get away with it. In this case, on these small units, I would recommend making sure you have some on hand, because on a unit like this where the thermals are fairly tight to begin with, I mean, you've got this tiny little heat sink here. That's all the metal you have. It's good. It's copper, but the heat the heat pipes are copper, but you want to assist it with some thermal compound in this case, definitely. This is a little bit thicker of a thermal compound than I'm used to working with. Shin-etsu looks like is what that is. Get a good drop of that on there. Looks like I did that wrong. Okay. Okay, so that's the proper way to do that. Note to anyone doing this, make sure to pay attention to the orientation in the video when I pulled it out. Okay, so that is that. Looks like, let's see here. So it looks like you want to pull, so when you reinstall this, that tab right there that we pulled to pull this out, looks like you want to pull that up as you're sliding that back in. I don't know if that's absolutely necessary, but it did appear to assist in easily reinstalling. So, put our hard drive, actually, it looks like, so when you put the hard drive back in, you have to, so you don't, so as you can see here, you can push the drive all the way back and it locks and it'll go into the connector, but then you can't close this. So when you do this, you want to close this, and as you're pushing this down in to lock in place, it locks the hard drive into place. It pushes the hard drive into the slot where it goes. And then we put this back in. That slides right along inside there. Reattach our plug. It is worth noting that if you don't need the optical drive, which I'm going to guess 99.9% of the people that get one of these in their possession probably don't need it to have an optical drive, you could easily, well, I guess this one you might want an adapter. You can easily find on eBay a CD drive shaped tray that has hard drive SATA on one side and this SATA on the other, and use it as a secondary hard drive bay. If you really got creative, you could probably pull this out and find a way to jerry-rig a full desktop drive. So if you're trying to do like I considered using one of these as my second in-car computer for my second car, with like an 8 or 12 terabyte storage in it. I think you could make it work. I'd have to mess around with it, but you could probably make it work if you really wanted to. It's also worth noting that this does have a small video card slot. I believe it is MXM, but from everything I have heard talking to people familiar with these, it appears that it's not just going to take any random MXM card. I'd have to actually get a card and put it in and try it and see what the difficulties are, but it sounds like you can't just randomly drop a card in. But there are HP compatible cards that are a little better than integrated for this. But second gen, which is what this is, Sandy Bridge generation, had pretty decent onboard video. It's not like the olden days when onboard video was totally worthless. You could even do some light gaming on this onboard video. We're not going to be running Crisis or anything like that, but light gaming would be doable. It is also worth noting that we've got 2 SODIMM laptop RAM slots, which I will go grab 2 sticks for. We also want to reattach our front panel here. That's back in place. In a setup like this, the first thing you're most likely to have a problem with is RAM. So I'm going to do this 1 stick at a time. Definitely, oops, I'm going to redo our 2 screws here. You know what, actually, I forgot to put that back in. So CD drive and hard drive are actually really easy to pull out. It's worth noting that's not a substantial process to do. And I should probably cover this too. So removal of the hard drive, super easy. HP likes to use this kind of odd, you can kind of see it here, this odd, I think it's not hex, I don't think, it's something else. I forget what you call these, but HP likes to use these screws. You can undo them with a flathead. They've got flathead on them. And then once you pull those out, the hard drive looks like it just pulls right out. You just unscrew that one, that one, that one, that one, and it'll pull right out. You'll put the new hard drive in, screw it in, and you'll be good to go. No complication there. It just looks like an odd mechanism. Optical drive is just a standard slim notebook style optical drive. So on the back, it's worth noting that we have it's like 6 USBs, audio out, or standard audio out, and then line out. It looks like you do have a PS2 mouse and keyboard. Kind of surprised they wasted the space on those. Would have rather had USBs, but whatever. And then you also have DisplayPort, which DisplayPort and VGA. For DisplayPort, in this case, I'm going to use one of these generic Dell OEM style DisplayPort to DVI. You're going to be able to get this, similar devices or similar adapters to this, in DVI, VGA, and HDMI. Probably the HDMI is the most useful one, but I'm going to plug that right in there. Do that. And then plug this sucker in. This does use an HP laptop style AC adapter for power. I believe these are running off a 135 watt unit. I did test it with a Dell, which is the same plug, but it will not work. It'll actually behave similar to what you would expect it to behave if you had a RAM problem. You definitely do have to have an HP to make this work. And it looks like actually, oh, okay, there it goes. Looks like I need to register my new RAM. Okay, so it sees that I changed the RAM. Turn it off. Put the other stick in. I don't usually do it, but as a best practice, I would recommend unplugging it just to make sure. I've seen some systems, and you never know which ones they are until it's too late. Sometimes you will see systems where when they appear to be shut off, they're not actually completely shut off, and putting a RAM stick in an turned on machine is not a good thing to do. So we put the second RAM stick in. So this unit actually appears to have a slight delay between when it receives power and when the unit actually powers on. So it appears that you have to plug it in and then wait about 5 seconds before hitting the power button. So what we have here is a 2nd gen Sandy Bridge Core i3 2120 with 4 gigs of RAM, and it's, aside from the lack of a high-end video card, which most of the time when you go buy a full-size box at the store, they also don't have a video card in them. Aside from that capability, this has all the features and capabilities of a regular desktop computer, and obviously the small size gives it some advantage in some areas. Anyway, I hope this was informative. You don't really need to see this, but I will put that back on, and that completes our setup. So anyway, again, hope that was informative.